But I just wanted to let you know I made a note as you were describing your experience. I just want to know for future reference, if John likes it, it's an instrumental break. But if he doesn't like it, he calls it the bridge. So now that we've got that sorted, those are the proper designations. No, I'm just messing with you. Yes, this bridge or
Big time.
instrumental
I
break.
agree with that completely.
Hey, everybody out there, and happy Friday. Welcome back to another viewer request episode over here at the Audiophiles. It's Andy, it's John, and it's time to dig into a song that was suggested by one of y'all out there. And today, the song that we have suggested to us came from user off by 50. So, off by 50. Um, and they offered up a track that I'm familiar with by a band that I'm familiar with on an episode, which was a song that I chose for John to check out. So it came on the Chavez Break Up Your Band episode. And who they suggested we listen to is a band called Shiner. And the song by Shiner that Off by 50 would like us to check out is called The Situationist. So, thank you, first of all, for Off by 50 for coming along here and offering up some Shiner because they were on my list to get here. They're sort of cut from a similar cloth as a lot of other bands that were their contemporaries that I've offered up on the channel before. So it was only a matter of time, and it only makes perfect sense that Shiner should feature on the channel at some point. And now here we are, thanks to Off by 50. So, John, your familiarity with the band Shiner hovers around
Right?
about nothing. Do you have
Uh,
no familiarity? Okay, fair, fair. I wasn't sure if you had heard of them or maybe heard a song or two, but it sounds like completely flying blind here, which is great. So you know the band now, at least, and you know the track, The Situationist. So please go off, check it out, and let Off by 50 and the rest of us know what you've made of it.
Will do.
A simple case of timing, one thin thread, a thimble full of lies. A simple case of timing, one thin thread, a thimble full of lies.
Okay, really interesting beginning. So you got a very brief sort of drum roll, almost roll up, and then a very quick sort of mini roll, mini fill, and then you're into it. I was just listening to it. It's quite odd sounding, interesting, not unpleasant. But it's kind of like driven by the bass, do 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 do, and then you just get these embellishments from the guitar. It's definitely a case of the bass is driving things and the guitar is along for the ride. There's almost these little jangly bits to it. It's obviously not jangle. Yeah, interesting. It feels kind of instantly very math rocky, which can be really interesting, but it also can be a bit sort of like, I don't know, not very emotional, more like it's structured and created rather than expressed. But I'm loving the drums. They sound great. Again, it's really this really interesting jittery sort of drum pattern, which is cool. And the vocals come in, and he's got one of them voices which I've heard lots of times. Just I think, who does he sound like? It sounds like somebody, but I can't put my finger on it. But it's not an uncommon voice. It's one of those ones where when he's delivering, although he isn't, it can sound a bit sort of flat. And it's slightly down in the mix. So he isn't right up there. I'm liking how it sounds. It's not a criticism of it. It's nice. I'm struggling to pick up the words, but then I always do. But it all sounds very interesting. Let's see how it progresses. strokes are excellent. Really interesting.
Love the time when little clumsy lining fit the crown on your head.
Let's get up. That's nice. That was excellent. That's what you sort of wish for. Really interesting. So you had this little breakdown and a little squeal and then it come in. And that guitar, it's all about context, isn't it? Because if you took this in a different context, that guitar, that first guitar came in with that sort of main motif, that could easily be the work of Mr. Johnny Marr in a different setting and a different song. The way it's just the beautiful sort of construction of it. Yeah, really nice. And then the second guitar comes in as well, and it interlocks. And the drumming's excellent as well. Again, I'm thinking there's time signatures all over the place. You think about this song, I haven't got the wherewithal to tell you what they are, but it's definitely different. And really interesting as well. Which kind of makes you sort of, you can't just predict 1, 2, 3, 4 all the time. So some beats every now and then just catch you unawares, almost like a twitch or something. It's really cool. That sounded excellent. I am going to drag it back out a bit. I don't know. Let's go to about there. A little bit more. cool. One of those slow puncture endings so that the air is just slowly being let out and then deflate down towards the finish. Cool. Yeah, that sort of instrumental bit in the middle is a real winner chicken dinner for me. Um, the first bit, as I stopped and rewound, was this sort of very beautiful um, guitar motif that interlocked with something that was a bit more sort of distorted and a bit more sort of grimy, for want of a better word, but they worked really well and all were being held together by that drumming, which was fantastic. And then it sort of shifted into this more muscular um, sort of phase um, where the bass came to the fore. And at first, I got the image of like the famous Nordic snake that eats itself. But then it felt more like a sort of there's one of these complex knots just slowly tightening, constricting itself. Um, yeah, it was really interesting. Again, that was all about structure and the way the whole thing was put together. And then in comes your man again, singing for the final sort of, I don't know, was it 3 or 4 lines? Um, and then slow puncher ending. That's the textbook. No, this is really interesting. I would say that instrumental middle section really did shine for me. It was excellent. Um, the beginning was decent, but it didn't pull me in. I could admire it and enjoy it, but I wouldn't say, wow, it was bobbing over straight away. But I think as a whole thing, the song, it had the really interesting bits to it that made me enjoy it and made me quite impressed by what they managed to do within that relatively short space of time as well. Having a Scooby's about the words or what it's about, I have no idea. So hopefully Andy will have done his homework. I'm sure he has, so we can go back and find out more. So let's do just that.
All right, buddy. So you are back. What did you make of Shiner and the Situationist?
Yeah, interesting. So it's all about context, really, isn't it? And I will dive into that in a second. But like our wonderful viewer's name, off by 50. Yeah, it could be 50 seconds, 50 miles. If you're talking about how old is a 55-year-old and you're off by 50, that's not great. So it's all about context. And the song's the same thing as well. But Shiner, first thing I think of as Shiner is a very famous Shiner, or famous to me anyway. So there's a band called Go Betweens. This is one of their albums, Tallulah. And there you see them, collective. And the inner sleeve, Grant McLennan, that's his picture. You've got the pictures of all the band, but
Oh
if you
yeah.
go in, there he is. And it's a very theatrical, badly made up Shiner.
Yeah, yeah.
That does not look real at all in any sense. I just think he's chosen that for this album picture, and it makes me think of Shiner every time I hear that. I think of that. It's hilarious. They do have quite good sense of humor.
He reminds me of John Candy's character in Spaceballs with those giant like rings around it. That's how cartoonishly large it is. You know what I mean?
No, China. Not heard of this band before, and it was a very interesting listen. So the song kicks off with this sort of a amuse bouche of a drum roll. It's very sort of very brief, kind of step right up, drum roll, and then a little mini fill, and then in comes the bass to complete a quite, I don't know if jagged's the right word, but a sort of fractured rhythm section, but fractured in a good way.
Yeah.
With the drums particularly expressive, and they are throughout the whole song. Spoiler alert, drums are my favorite part of this whole song. Really, really good. So the melody at the start of the song, this initial bit, is led by the bass, with the guitar almost playing the role of a sidecar passenger. They're inextricably linked, but he's definitely not driving. You kind of get the sort of 4 note, I think it is, melody from the bass, and then there's almost these like jangles on top from the guitar, particularly at the end. Although this is not jangly guitar, but it has that effect. There's almost some of them are chiming, almost like a massive glockenspiel.
Mm-hmm.
The chimes it was really interesting. So the whole thing at this point has this feel of math rock. You know, that's the first thing I'm getting. Um, and then the vocals come in. Now the singer has this very familiar feeling sound to his voice. I've heard this before in other, but I struggle to put my finger and say, yeah, he definitely sounds like this person. But it's not an unfamiliar sound. It's very low key, and I don't want to sound critical, but it's almost like a flat voice, a bit dispassionate, as it were, or displaced.
Mm-hmm.
And it has a slightly back seat in the mix as well. So it's just, an inch below the surface of the water rather than sitting as a lily pad on the water in terms of if the track was a pond. Um, but it's just there. I like it. It's hard to make out the words, as always. But I'm enjoying his contribution to the overall sound, and it fits, it all works, and it sounds great. So we get a few lines of lyrics, and then we have a break. And then it comes back with a few lines. The song at this point feels more like a construction, as some math rock songs do, rather than an expression or a narration. There are different ways that songs can arrive and their purpose or whatever. Again, it's not a criticism, it's just more of an observation that this is a thing they're building. And the small kind of melodic contribution, mostly for the bass. That's not what's pulling me in at the moment. It's more the rhythmic nature of it and the interesting structure of the rhythm section. Groove has definitely been put down, and I particularly like the drum action. I think I said in the reaction throughout the song, I'm not keeping up at all, but there's several different type signatures going on. And at points when he's drumming, quite simply, he's not being flash, but the timing of them, some of those hits just come as a surprise. They're almost like a twitch reflex or whatever. You're not, it's not 1, 2, 3, 4, and you can expect it. So again, it gives you that sort of interest and intrigue. But of course, it's fairly, I would say, lacking emotion at this point. And of course, as soon as I think that, all of it changes. So around the 1:30-ish mark, the guitars begin to sort of stir and become more vigorous and dynamic. And also the rhythm section ramps up a notch, so it becomes more physical and urgent. And about a dozen seconds later, after this initial surge, the vocals change into that classic sort of howl of emotion from somewhere in the hinterlands between the major conurbations of post-grunge and post-hardcore. It's kind of within that region. Yeah, and again, it kind of feels quite of the 90s. Some bits like that sound a bit more earlier, some bits sound later than the 90s, but it's really interesting. His vocals at this point now are completely different to the initial sort of low key delivery. It has now that sort of pleasant, drawn out, big vowel sound, and the guitars are aping this delivery with these huge chords, and they're almost each chord is like it's on a runway and it's pausing at the end to be checked out and then goes on to the next one. And I think I put in here, it's a display of emotion more, and it's more controlled than an outburst of emotion, like classic you grungy stuff, whatever they, if this you get these loud, quiet, so they're louder, the sort of outbursts of raw emotion. The better ones, definitely. This is more a display of emotion, which has that control to it. It's different. It's really well done. There's a lovely as the guitars sort of roil on. There's a lovely cascading effect with the guitars and the cymbal work sort of rolling over each other as almost like surf breaking. Um, this job is really good. I really enjoy this stuff. Um, we get then this we're stretching a yawn from the bass, and then we go into, I guess, an elongated, I hate to use the word bridge, instrumental break. Um, where we get some squeals and chugs, a really nice sort of high note squeal. I enjoy all this sort of like special effects, for want of a better word, on songs, when it's like this and really interesting noises, and a nice little chugger. And then in comes this really pretty guitar motif, sorry. And as it's playing along, it's really pretty. And I was thinking again about context. Because if you isolated that guitar, the way it's constructed, I mean, some of it, it's almost like crystalline, the way it's a beautiful little melody and really intricate. If you took that melody out and dropped it into something else, it could almost be the works of Mr. Johnny Marr, the way that
Mm,
guitar is played. It's unbelievable. But in this, it works well and it doesn't sound anything like him, you know,
yeah.
which is great. And it starts to entwine with a really interesting drum pattern, which is starting to sort of shift and twitch as well. It's just great because it's like here's two things that look really different, and then when you put them together, they just work. And then in comes a second guitar part, which is more sort of distorted and a more of a general sort of bigger notes. If you imagine the sort of the guitar part, the first guitar part in terms of a sine wave, whatever, it's like that, and this is more smoother curves. And then again, this is the last piece that fits together with the initial guitar part and the drum part, and it interlocks, and it's absolutely beautiful. Really, really impressive, and I've enjoyed the hell out of it. Um, as I said before, because of the sort of math rock element, there's all sorts of weird fucking time signatures going on here and unexpected stuff. But it really is a thing of beauty at this point. And then just some shortly after the 3 minute mark, the bass starts to initially be who's kind of been lost to this point with the other stuff. It becomes more muscular and comes forward and right, and with the rhythmic side starts to rise up and it tightens um, from this fluid thing of beauty that's been, connected together. It becomes instead this thing almost like a creature twisting and turning on itself. Or I also imagined one of those really complex knots that's made out of like, saplings and stuff. And as it dries, it tightens in on
Yeah.
itself and creaks. And this is what it was doing here in the song. And there's a little point where the bass rises briefly from the morass for a little run. And that's where the vocals come back in for like a few lines. And again, it's the wide, sort of broad brushstrokes on his vocal chords that fits really nicely. I haven't got a Scooby, is what he said. Um, and then just as the last lyric leaves the room, the music sort of slows to a staggered close. The guitar chords again ringing out as the drummer paces it down to the end. It's your classic slow puncture ending, with the song slowly deflating,
Mhm.
rather than you let go of a balloon. This is the down it goes. So yeah, and I finished. So yeah, really interesting song. Hand on heart, I really admired and found the beginning interesting, but it didn't pull me in. Whereas the middle section really did. I thought it was outstanding. And because of that, when the other stuff came back in, it had really won me over. So it didn't matter what they did after that, to be honest with you. So
Mhm.
yeah, this is really interesting stuff. And it's a kind of Venn diagram, isn't it, of, I don't know, mathy rock, post grunge, post hardcore, some other sort of alternative indie rocky
Yeah.
shit, and it's this little coloured, segment in the middle. So
Yeah.
again, which makes it quite interesting. So please do tell me more about Shiner.
I will. I'll do just that. And thanks so much for your input. I appreciate it. And I'm sure Off by 50 does too. But I just wanted to let you know I made a note as you were describing your experience. I just want to know for future reference, if John likes it, it's an instrumental break. But if he doesn't like it, he calls it the bridge. So now that we've got that sorted, those are the proper designations. No, I'm just messing with you. Yes, this bridge or
Big time.
instrumental
I
break.
agree with that completely.
Yeah, if it makes it more palatable, I will agree that the instrumental break in this track is fabulous. I mean, it sounds great. So yeah, Shiner. They are an American post-hardcore stroke alternative rock stroke math rock band from Kansas City, Missouri. That was initially active from 1992 until 2003, and then they went on hiatus for quite some time. Dare I say a breakup? But like a lot of breakups, they don't always last forever. And they reunited in 2012. So it is currently composed of guitarist vocalist Alan Epley, bassist backing vocalist Paul Malinowski, drummer Jason Gherkin, and guitarist Josh Newton. Shiner's influences include the Jesus Lizard, Slint, Swerve Driver. Are you familiar with Swerve Driver? I thought they're from your neck of the woods, aren't they? They're from England, aren't they?
Yeah, they always sound.
Very
I
American
could be
sound, if I
wrong.
may be so bold to say. They
Yeah,
have,
yeah.
yeah,
I'm pretty sure they are British, but they sound very American.
yes, 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 yeah, yeah. That's that. I thought they were American until probably like 10 years ago, and someone told me I was like, "What the fuck? Are you serious?" Uh, Melvin's Failure and Chavez. So Failure and Chavez definitely, you can I can hear it in the guitar a lot in this track in particular. Shiner formed in 1992 under the name Orchid, with an initial lineup consisting of Epley, drummer Jeff Brown, and bassist Sean Sherrill. Brown was replaced in 1993 by Tim Dow, and the band began touring with acts such as Sunny Day Real Estate. I can even hear a little bit of Sunny Day Real Estate in the guitar work in this one, and that's that mathy thing that they inject into their early emo sound, those guys over in Sunny Day Real Estate. Chore, they went on tour with Jawbox, Season to Risk, The Jesus Lizards, as mentioned earlier, and Girls Against Boys. 1993 saw the release of their debut single Brooks by DeSoto Records, with two more singles following before the release of their first LP, Splay, which was recorded at Steve Albini's Chicago studio in 1995. After the release of Splay, Cheryl was replaced by Paul Malinowski. With the new lineup, Shiner recorded their sophomore effort, Lula Divinia, at Chicago Recording Company in the summer of 1996. The album was released in March 1997 on Hit It Recordings. Following the release of Lula Divinia, independent record label Sub Pop released a 7-inch single of the group's songs Sleep It Off and Half Empty, and the band toured with Hum in 1998. This is the album that got my attention with Shiners. You're probably checking on the box between the failure and the Hum references in 1996, 97. This is when I'm like 14, 15 years old. So yeah, this is the album that definitely got my attention from them. Dow departed in 1998 with a final performance with the band being on the song Spinning from a split single with The Farewell Bend. A replacement for Dow was found in drummer Jason Gherkin, formerly of Molly Maguire. And after a brief stint with Joel Hamilton on guitar, Josh Newton joined the band as well. This lineup would go on to record Shiner's third full length, Starless. Starless was released on a label run by members of Descendants, owned and operated in 2000. Finally, with the stable lineup, the band recorded their fourth LP, The Egg, and Matt Talbot's recording studio, Great Western Record Recorders, in Tolano, Illinois. The Egg was released by DeSoto Records. Following more than a year of touring behind The Egg, Shriner broke up in 2003. After Shriner reunited for a series of performances in the 2010s and reissued all of their previous studio albums as vinyl LPs, the band officially banded back together to release Schadenfreude in 2020, their first release in almost 20 years. The reunited band supported the album with a tour all the way through 2022. And last year in 2025, the band released their sixth studio album, Believe You Me, stylized in all caps as one word, on Spartan Records. This track, offered up by Off by 50, The Situationist, features on the band's 1997 album, the aforementioned Lula Divinia. The band's lineup on this album includes Alan Epley, vocals guitar, Paul Malinowski, bass guitar, and Tim Dow on drums. Over at Sputnik Music, the album sits at an aggregate score of 4.1 out of 5 based on 158 reviews. The Houston Press called the album a teeth jarring, brain teasing, mathematically precise demonstration of abrasive virtuosity. Also, I should mention the song is in 5/4, but also goes into 4/4 and goes into 6/4 all at different times. In fact, I think 6/4 is its main time signature. Then it veers into 4/4 and 5/4 time signature. So it's very very math rocky, and you're unlike Tool. You shouldn't catch a lot of shit for this one because I think you nailed your observations. So, the Orlando Weekly called it a math rock masterpiece, and the Chicago Tribune wrote that the album tastefully mixes catchy hooks, gnarled noise, and old-fashioned sonic womp into a King Crimson ish blast. Writing for Lollipop magazine back in 1997, Austin Nash offered up the following in his review of the album. Lula Divinia is delicate and heavy, and tuned down most of the way through. It's unpredictable, dissonant, and boasts excellent vocal tracks. The combination of third gear scratch, sideways, and pinned is alluring, dark in the middle, and brilliant around the edges. A sexy, warm bitch silhouetted in the doorway of your run-down hovel. A Leviathan Poseidon reaching for the clouds from a stormy sea. Frankly, this Kansas City trio has produced the best release I've heard in 2 years. It hasn't left my CD player in 2 weeks, sign of the times with the CD player reference. Brash, powerful, a rainbow screaming from a pot of shit. If this album had an ass, I would kiss it like the feet of Christ. Those guys at Lollipop, they get away with a lot with say. I mean, I imagine some editors would probably rein some of that language in, but they just wrote whatever. And Grant Henry of Silent Uproar revisited the album after its release and wrote, I was lucky to get introduced to Lula Divinia prior to its reissue, and it's one of the most repeated albums in my player this year for sure. If there was one word to attach it, it would be thick. The raunchy and bloated guitars fill all the space not covered by other instruments, and although it can't be called heavy, the punchy mix and wild chords will push any stereo hard. On the music lie very husky and brown vocals that make melody work. His very deep voice, especially on the opening track, The Situationist, harkens back to the days of a prosperous dinosaur junior. This guy has no need to scream and really doesn't have the range to hit shrieks, so he ignores them. The rest of the instruments scream for him. The drums couldn't be punchier and do more than simply present a backbone on Lula Divinia. They're a key element in the composition. If there was no heavy-hitting rhythm, the strumming guitars would be a wall of sound with no direction. It's so balanced, it hurts. So, let's jump into these lyrics, although I found it apropos that you latched onto the drums, and the last bit I have from any of these critiques is gassing up how great the drums on this album are, so hats off to you for keying in on that. A simple case of timing, one thin thread, a thimble full of lies, a lie along the way, could make your wave. Then we'd all say your name, fly your flag away, and see who waves. They might just say your name. I loved the time when a little clumsy rhyming could fit the crown on your head. Head down, arms straight out, left without having completely sussed it out. Head to the sun, I have left to run. So the track is a critique of authenticity, artistic success, and how easily genuine movements are watered down for public consumption. The lyrics explore. I just looked over to see you grinning, and I was like, "Yep, that's the John I know." The lyrics explore how a thin thread of calculated choices or lies can propel a musician to fame. The title nods to the 1950s avant-garde movement, Situationist International, which critiqued mass media and commercialization. The lyric, I loved the time when a little clumsy rhyming could fit the crown on your head, serves as a nostalgic commentary from frontman Alan Epley. It laments a bygone era of raw, independent art before it became heavily commodified. So yes, John, please go on. I know you have something to say about this.
Just I heard the bits, clumsy rhyme and then fit the crown on your head, and I just immediately had that image of Biggie with his crown.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. That's not where I thought you were going with it, but the moment you got to Biggie, I was like, you know what? Yeah, that's an iconic picture, and you're right, absolutely right. But yes, I love the fact that they sort of went at the neck, and think of it like at a perfect time too, because you wish Cobain would have been around to have heard this song, since he was probably the poster child of this act occurring. But yeah, I'm really glad that you like this tune. I'm sure Off by 50 is as well. Um, I'm now kind of thinking of, man, do I bring Sideways or Pinned or another track off this album to the channel before you run off and check it out? I think, between given what you liked about it, some of the praise that was hurled its way around the time, it would probably be one that you would want to do a little deeper dive into and check out because it's definitely worth it. It's one of those great mid 90s treasures that fucking so many of these albums that were, I mean, I mentioned Hum Failure, all these other bands all got swept under the rug because they were just not, everybody wanted that but polished, and those guys weren't willing to cross that line, therefore swept under the rug. But yeah, I think it would definitely be something you'd be interested in. Let me suss out a song that I can bring to the channel, and then I'll let you off the leash if you are so interested. But yeah, thanks for
sure,
giving it
yeah.
a go, John. Awesome. And yeah, again, off by 50. Thank you so much for bringing Shiner to the channel, and for giving me a little kick in the tail as far as getting them here. They should have been here sooner, frankly. So yeah, all that out of the way, please drop a comment in the comments field if there's other stuff by these guys we should check out, or similar bands to, the Chavez's, Shiner, Hum, Failure, all these mid 90s acts that we should maybe check out. Feel free to draw them out, or any other band for that matter, frankly, in this episode or any of our other comments fields or any prior episodes. So long as one of us isn't familiar with it, it will make the list for a future Friday episode. Please also like, share, and or subscribe if you haven't done any or all of those things. We really do appreciate it. And hopefully John and I will catch all y'all in growing numbers on the next installment of the Audio Files. We'll see you later, guys.